The Living Zen-podcast is a gift from the members and associates of the Victoria Zen Centre to you. If you enjoy it, please be sure to let your friends know about Living Zen. If you'd like to support our community, download the Living Zen-podcast app for iPod, iPhone, and Android. One of the most meaningful ways to show your support is by becoming a part of our Sangha as an associate. Your commitment of $10 a month will ensure that offerings like the Living Zen podcast and our online e-Zendo will continue to be available around the world to everyone with an interest in truly living Zen. To become an associate, please visit our website at zenwest.ca and click on Become an Associate. Many more Zen Talks are available for purchase on iTunes and Amazon.com. Just search for Venerable Eshu Martin. These talks are also available for free on our website to all members and associates of the Victoria Zen Centre. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. Any questions?
Yeah. Could you address the question of the importance of the officer training roles? And what's their purpose? Why do you get these people, including me, to do things that we do?
Oh, because it's a lot easier than doing it myself. No. When I first started training, I had a conversation with the Roshi at the temple, and he talked about, we use this term monastery in the West. It's a Western term, monastery, and has this manas, sort of aloneness as a component of it. And the word monastery comes from a different tradition in which the idea is to kind of leave society and sort of cloister yourself in this closed environment for an extended period of time. And the Roshi said, this is completely the wrong word for what we do. He said the Japanese is senmon dojo, which translates closer to like a training place, a training center. So the various roles, each of us, I think, in our upbringing, in the way that we're raised and the experiences that we have certain affinities towards certain kinds of behaviors and interactions, and certain aversions to certain other kinds of relationships and behaviors. And so the training officers we take this sort of community environment and we break up the various tasks and responsibilities that are required to help that community run harmoniously, and we really clearly define them. So, this person is responsible for this, this, and this. And basically anything in the training environment is somebody's responsibility. And so clarifying whose responsibility what is, this is one of the things that really sort of freaks people out when they first start officer training, is like they'll see something, that needs to be done, and they'll reach for it, and the Ino will go, don't do that. That's not your responsibility. We go, I'm just trying to help. But the idea is that in the officer roles, you have these clearly defined responsibilities, this clearly defined role, and your job is to kind of let go of who you are, like the person that walked in the door, and manifest completely as this particular role. In some ways, it's like theater or acting, where you come into this drama of the community environment, and you take on a role for the function of helping that community function harmoniously. So we have like the Jikijitsu is the person up here, and they're the timekeeper. And the character, they're kind of archetypes almost. So the character is one of, the Jikijitsu is the head of the meditation hall. They're responsible for the discipline. They're responsible for keeping time. They're kind of the hard edge. In the traditional sort of format, they're often referred to as like the Zendo father. So it's like this kind of authority, clear boundaries, straight lines, keep in step, be quiet. That's the role. And then on the other side of the Zendo, you've got the Shoji, who is responsible for the well-being of the students outside of the meditation hall, and they're often referred to as the Zendo mother. And so they're responsible for the environment, like, is it too hot, is it too cold, is there enough ventilation, all these kinds of things. If somebody has a physical problem, or someone has real heart, you can't get up after a meditation, the Shoji is responsible to go and make sure that person is taken care of. And so often, that's another thing that will really freak people out, is like, where I trained is on a mountain about 6,500 feet up, and so sometimes people would come up, and the first day that they're there, we'd sit, and then we stand up and people just pass out, right? And so they pass out and nobody moves. Everyone just stands there, and the Shoji goes, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And so people go like, doesn't anyone care? I thought this was supposed to be compassionate and all this kind of stuff. But it's the understanding of compassion is allowing that individual to fulfill a responsibility that they've accepted. So you allow that to all take place. And you also see how difficult it is to allow people to have responsibilities. Like, we're always sort of like sticking our hand into other people's business, a lot of the time. So the challenge of the training role is that, as I said, we all come with our own kind of load towards a particular thing. And the training roles are, in a work environment, you kind of assess somebody for what their talents and sort of leanings are, and you kind of put them in a position that matches that. And traditionally in Zen, you would see what somebody's strengths and abilities are, and you put them in the opposite role, because you want them to be able to drop where they're coming from and to manifest more completely as a human being. So you get, young guys who are really all about like, I'm right and I know how to do things, and you make them be shoji because, oh gosh, now I've got to be, someone says, oh, I think I hurt my toe, and they got to go, oh really? Oh, that's terrible. Can we get some ice for that? And likewise, you have people who, would never speak up, even if they had to really suffer for it. They would just rather not have any kind of conflict or anything like that. And you put them in this seat over here where they're responsible for maintaining the discipline of the Zendo, and they've got to say like, sit still, be quiet. And it's horrifying. But it offers them an opportunity to experience their capacity to really sort of challenge this idea of I'm not the kind of person that, or I don't have it in me to. And it allows you to sort of flesh out as a human being, and allows you to do things like learn how to set boundaries and learn how to be compassionate. And there's all kinds of roles in the Zen Center, the Densu, leading the chants, and all of these skills. And as a person trains an officer, about the time where they really start to get it, they really start to sort of grasp the principle that underlies the role that they're doing, then you move them. You move them to the next role. So that we're always it's about being able to transform to be able to meet the situation that arises before us. So as you develop as a practitioner, as a monk, for example, like I've gone to a monastery where in the evening I was asked to do the shoji role, in the morning I was asked to do the jikijitsu role, and for the rest of the session I was asked to do the tenzo role. And so the idea is that it's a training center in the sense that you're not intended to stay there for the rest of your life. You're intended to go there to round out, to actually experience the capacity of what it is to be a human being, so that you can then go out into the world and be of benefit in the world. As a situation arises, it's like, does this situation require the jikijitsu or the shoji? Does this situation require somebody who can, clamp down on it, or does it require a softer touch? And you don't have to sort of shy away from your life anymore. You don't have to shy away from any situation because you don't feel equipped or that you don't have the capacity to deal with it because you've experienced that you do. So that's a long-winded response to what the training. So that's why when people come in and do those officers, we have our name tags, but as soon as a person takes on the role, you're not supposed to address them by their name, their personal name. You're supposed to address them by the officer. So, if the person's the Jikijitsu, you don't call them Goju anymore. You say Jiki or Jikijitsu, just to help them drop the personal self and manifest more fully as the role. So, I need a drink. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
What is it that you guys were born these names? Were you your parents, or rather, your parents didn't give you these names, right?
No. Your Dharma parents gave you the names. Yeah. No. Yeah. They're again everything. There's sort of two approaches that we can take to any situation in our lives, and one is sort of the divisive perspective, the dualistic perspective, which takes me as being separate from the environment. And so in that sort of path, I do things because I feel like it'll benefit me, and I'm not really concerned about, or I don't even consider really the cost or how that impacts everyone else. The other perspective is to really recognize yourself as a part of, as a not separate from your environment and the people and the relationships that you have around you. And it's difficult sometimes to sort of consistently make a choice, And when you look at your name, where your name comes from, your name and your identity, yourself, are really, they're stuck together really well. So the idea is that when you've practiced for a while, we have this ceremony called Jukai, which is the receiving of the sila, which are guidelines for how to go about living a harmonious and awakened life. And when you receive the sila, you become an awakening being, what's called a bodhisattva. And so you receive a name. And that name is like a reminder of where you're pointed. So the teacher tries to give you a name that is either reinforcement of a particular aspect that helps you, or a pointer about something that you stumble on a lot. But the idea behind the name is that it has a particular meaning, which is a reminder. It's a support or a pointer to help you kind of continue along the path. So,
thank you.
Yeah. All these people, they go, oh. And my teacher used to say, it's big shoes. The idea is that the name is something that, in the ceremony it says, you'll receive a name, this is your true name, and your task or your practice is to fulfill that name. So, yeah.
I had when I first started to look into Zen, my friend said, I don't like this Zen thing. It doesn't grab me right. My cat has a lot of focus and awareness and spontaneity, but humans are suffering and loving and passionate, and he was arguing that Zen was contrary to human nature, and I never really responded satisfactorily to that. So I'm wondering how that grabs you.
I don't really get the question. So
he was saying that there was value in this strife and suffering existence of humans, because I guess you learn so much from suffering and overcoming it and suffering again. and he was saying that how he viewed Zen was more of the nature of a cat than the nature of a human. I don't know. Maybe there's no question there, but why is that wrong? I think it is. It feels wrong.
I don't know. I think part of the problem is that we don't seem to learn from suffering a lot of the time, and I think the real challenge for people, I think, is that we suffer and then we don't learn. We seem to occasionally, we grasp something and make it a transition, but generally we tend to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. So, the other side of it, the question where I always go with stuff like that is like, has this person ever practiced Zen? So the idea of Zen, and I think the biggest part of it is like, I'm not interested in everyone in the world practicing Zen, really. Zen in Buddhism, the idea is liberation from suffering. If you don't feel that you're particularly suffering all that much, have a good life. Enjoy yourself. If you come to the place where you start to that pattern or that sort of cycle of suffering, of just seeing like, geez, we seem to actually just do things that cause us more trouble, and you want to investigate that or gain some insight into it, then that's the path. But there are many paths. But like if he's happy banging his head against the wall, more power to him. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whenever I'm receiving the tea, I have this strange sense that if I fail to give the signal, the person delivering the tea is obligated to pour out the entire pot. Right? Is that what's at stake here?
Yeah, see, we have this I guess, the sort of common Western understanding of compassion and sort of like Zen practice, the understanding of compassion are two different things. So to talk about mindfulness is one thing, to talk about being mindful and aware of what we're doing is one thing, and to practice it is quite different. And so, there's sort of in the structure of Zen, there are several areas within which the consequences of mental gaps are kind of built in. And that's one of them. And the grand scheme of things is like, so you get some hot tea on your hand, you're not going to die, really, But it sure is you want to talk about instant learning, right? Like, it's like, when the tea comes, you need to pay attention because that person will pour that sucker all over your hand. And they're not going to pour out the whole pot because I tell you, the first inch you go, right? And there's lots of places like that. Like one of my favorites is during the meals, right? Like in a formal meal, you hand your bowl to the server, and then you indicate how much you want with your hands, right? So if you hold your hands still, you want a full serving, like a full ladle or a full tong or whatever it is they're serving with. And if you rub your hands like this, it's like half a serving. And when you've got enough, you just go like this. Well, the ritual is such that there's a lot sometimes going on at once, and the server comes and hands them their bowl. And if you're not paying attention, they're serving. And so suddenly you look up and you've got this bowl of brown rice, like, right? And then, so then at the end of the meal, everyone's finished and they're all sitting at the table waiting to move on to the next, well, there's usually a rest period after the meal, and you're sitting there. But, you're not going to die. And the natural consequence for the lack of awareness is made utterly clear. So the whole one of the things even the form that we use here of like these right beside one another, and how we ask people to come in. We say, oh, I want to go and do this practice with a community of people, and then you come in, and we have this rule, like you've got to sit right beside the next person. And the reason is that we say, oh, I want to go and practice with a group, but if we let people come in, they would sit as far away from each other as they could until they absolutely had to sit beside one another. And in the monastic environment, the reason that you do this is because there are consequences for your lack of mindfulness when you're living that close to one another. In a Senmon dojo, in the formal training hall, you live there, you sleep there, your stuff is just in a shelf behind you, and at night you lay down there. And so you learn how to care for your space and realize that if you're not paying attention to what you're doing with your mind and your body and your possessions, they impact the people around you. And, if you're not paying attention when you're walking, you step on a person in front of you. And that there's just this sort of direct, immediate consequence. And it's very easy to see that what the cause of it is when you're gapped out. When you take a moment to sort of contemplate what's, the nature of a cat or something like that. Oh, you bump into the next person and they spill something, and so so yeah, they'll pour it on you. In fact, who was it? Yeah, we have a member. He's not here tonight, but that was his first experience on a Tuesday night. He was talking and I think Doyu was the shoji and did his job.
Could we make that tea hot?
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I remember seeing a video in a class a couple years ago where I remember it was like the staff at a restaurant had to all practice Zen in Japan, and if people didn't do it right, they got like a hit. Does that happen a lot?
The kisaku, which is the stick, is used in our tradition, and it's not used as a punishment ever in our tradition. Particularly in our center, the way that it's used, you have to ask for it first. If you want to receive the kisaku, you have to ask for it. It's only used in retreats on our tradition. And the idea is that it's to help the person rather than to punish them or to hurt them. In fact, if you're hurting somebody, you're doing it wrong. So I think I know the movie that you're talking about. And it was, it's quite... in Japan, I think in North America it could be done this way as well. But in Japan, for many people, business people, Zen monasteries are often used as a form of discipline or punishment for, if this employee does something inappropriate or shows a lack of discipline, you've got to go and do a sesshin, like an intensive at a Zen monastery to sort of straighten you out. I don't really approve of that or recommend it because it kind of defeats the purpose of it. But certainly in Japan, they like that kind of thing. So,
thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.